They were 7. By dawn, only one could still scream. August 1993. A group of experienced hikers set out to trek the Khamar Daban mountain range in southern Siberia. The weather was perfect. The route was familiar. There was no reason, absolutely no reason, for what happened next. But as the sun began to set on the second day, something invisible crept into their camp. And it began to kill them. What started as a routine expedition turned into one of the most disturbing unsolved mysteries in modern hiking history. 7 people, all in their early 20s. Students and young professionals from Irkutsk, drawn together by their love of the wilderness. Lyudmila Korovina led the group, a seasoned hiker with years of experience in Siberia's brutal terrain. The others, Alexander, Timur, Denise, Valentina, Victoria, and Natalia. Friends, confident, prepared. They had done this before. They carried proper gear, enough food for a week, maps of the region, and a clear itinerary. This was not a reckless adventure. This was supposed to be just another trek through the mountains they loved. But the Khamar Daban range is not like other mountains. Locals avoid certain trails. They speak in low voices about the sickness that sometimes falls over the peaks, a creeping madness that has no name. The hikers had heard the stories. They laughed them off. They shouldn't have. The first day was textbook, clear skies, moderate temperatures. The group moved steadily through dense forest and rocky inclines, their spirits high. They camped near a river that night, cooked a simple meal, and talked late into the evening. Lyudmila made notes in her journal. She wrote about the beauty of the landscape, the clarity of the stars. She mentioned nothing unusual, but the wind had begun to shift. By mid-morning on the second day, the group had ascended into a higher altitude. The trees thinned, the air grew cold. A thick, unnatural fog began to roll in from the valleys below, slow at first, then swallowing the trail entirely. Visibility dropped to a few meters. The temperature plummeted. They pressed on. They had navigated fog before, but this fog felt different, heavier. It clung to their skin. It muffled sound. One of the hikers later described it as breathing through cloth. Then, just after noon, Valentina stumbled. She said she felt dizzy, nauseous. Her skin had turned pale, almost gray. The others assumed it was altitude sickness, common enough at that elevation. They gave her water, slowed the pace, told her to rest. But within an hour, Timur collapsed. Then Victoria. One by one, they began to fall. It came without warning, without logic. First, the nausea. Then violent tremors. Their skin turned cold and clammy. Some began to vomit, thick, dark blood. Others screamed about pain in their chests, their heads, their throats. They clawed at their own faces. They couldn't breathe. They couldn't think. Lyudmila tried to help. She checked their symptoms, gave them medicine from the first aid kit, tried to keep them warm. But nothing worked. The sickness spread like wildfire through the group, and the fog kept closing in. Alexander began to hallucinate. He shouted about shadows moving in the mist, about figures watching them from the rocks. He tried to run, stumbling, incoherent, and had to be restrained by the others. Victoria wept uncontrollably, begging for help that wouldn't come. Dennis lay motionless on the ground, his eyes open but unseeing. What was happening to them? By late afternoon, the group had stopped moving entirely. They were too weak, too sick, too terrified. Lyudmila made the decision to set up an emergency camp. They needed shelter, they needed rest, but the fog would not lift, and the sickness would not stop. Timur was the first to die. He convulsed violently, coughing blood, and then went still. The others stared in horror. This wasn't altitude sickness. This wasn't dehydration. This was something else. Valentina tried to crawl away from the camp. She made it a few meters before collapsing face down in the mud. She didn't get up. Alexander screamed until his voice broke. Then he, too, fell silent. Only 3 were still conscious: Lyudmila, Victoria, and Natalia. Lyudmila, despite her own pain, tried to lead the survivors down the mountain. They had to get out. They had to reach help, but every step was agony. The fog disoriented them. The trail vanished. They stumbled through the wilderness, half blind, half dead. Victoria collapsed within an hour. Lyudmila and Natalia left her behind. They had no choice. By nightfall, Lyudmila was gone too. Natalia was alone. She didn't remember how she made it down the mountain. Her mind had fractured. Her body was shutting down. She staggered through the darkness, bleeding from her nose and mouth, her vision blurred, her heart pounding in her chest. Somehow, Miraculously, she stumbled into a small village at the base of the range. She collapsed at the door of a local home. The villagers found her hours later, barely alive, covered in blood, delirious. She whispered a single word over and over, dead, all dead. A rescue team was dispatched immediately. They climbed the trail Natalia had described, following her path through the fog. What they found made no sense. 6 bodies, scattered across the mountainside. Some were huddled together. Others were found meters apart, as if they had tried to flee. Their faces were twisted in expressions of agony. Blood stained the ground around them, but there were no signs of violence, no animal attacks, no avalanches, no falls. Medical examiners were baffled. Autopsies revealed hemorrhaging in the lungs, brain swelling, and internal bleeding, but no clear cause. Some showed signs of hypothermia, but not severe enough to kill. Others had traces of blood in their stomachs, as if they had been coughing it up for hours. Toxicology tests found nothing. No poison, no pathogens, no radiation. The official conclusion? Acute cardiac arrest due to unknown factors. But that explained nothing. Natalia recovered physically, but mentally, she never returned. She refused to speak about what happened on the mountain. When pressed by investigators, she would stare blankly, her hands trembling. She described the fog, the sickness, the deaths, but offered no answers. She couldn't. She didn't understand it herself. Years later, in rare interviews, she hinted at something darker. She spoke of a presence in the fog. She said the air itself felt wrong, poisoned, suffocating, alive. She mentioned hearing whispers, though she couldn't make out the words, but she also admitted she might have been hallucinating. The trauma, the blood loss, the horror, it had all blurred together in her mind. Or was it madness? Over the years, investigators, scientists, and conspiracy theorists have proposed dozens of explanations. None of them hold up. Gas leak? No volcanic or geothermal activity in the area. No toxic fumes detected. Mass poisoning? They ate different foods, drank from different sources. Toxicology was clean. Infectious disease? No pathogen was found. No similar cases reported before or since. Altitude sickness? Doesn't explain the blood, the hallucinations, or the rapid onset. Psychological breakdown? All 7 at once? Impossible. Secret military testing? Popular theory, but no evidence. No restricted zones nearby. Every answer leads to more questions. The Khamar Daban range still stands, silent and indifferent. Hikers still walk its trails. Most come back safely. But locals warn, don't go when the fog comes. There are other stories, whispers passed down through generations, tales of travelers who walked into the mist and never returned, of voices heard in the valleys, of a sickness that falls from the sky. No one knows what killed 6 people in August 1993. No one knows why Natalia survived, and no one knows if it could happen again. The mountain keeps its secrets, and somewhere in the fog, something waits.